Still entitled The Adam Savage Project is brought to you this week by TripleByte. Applying to programming jobs sucks, from endless applications to countless hours of technical screens. With TripleByte, there's a better way. You do one online interview, then you get to go straight to final interviews at hundreds of companies, from tech giants like Dropbox to exciting startups. It's like the common app for software engineers. There's no resume needed. Apply now at triplebyte.com/untitled. And if you take a job through TripleByte, they'll offer you a $1,000 signing bonus. That's triplebyte.com/untitled. Now on with the show.
Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Greg Broadmore.
Greg Broadmore! Holy cow! Welcome.
Thank you.
Have we had you on the podcast before?
No.
That's
I talked about it
crazy.
Not when I was here. Yeah.
No, that's ridiculous.
You guys really dropped the ball on this
We
one.
really
I
did.
mean, it's only
Thank
we've done
you
1,000
for having me.
episodes or something.
So I think we first.
Well, I'm not often here, to be honest.
It's
I've
true,
been to
you're in
San
New
Francisco
Zealand.
maybe 3 or 4 times altogether. So
But we've also done our podcast from Comic-Con, which is where we met. We met at San Diego
Yeah.
Comic-Con in, I think, 2009?
yeah, and then you invited me back. So it was a big geek out moment for me. I know you're a fan of District 9, but you invited me back to the studio where you're making Mythbusters, and
Yeah.
it blew my mind. It was freaking unbelievable. I was such a geek for that. I know that you love coming down.
I
to
was
Weta and
totally a
seeing
geek
this
for you
stuff.
being there. I was like, Greg Broadmore's in the house!
I have never been more jealous than when Adam and Norm and Joey came back from New Zealand and were like, listen, we went there and we saw all these things and we went and did this and this and this and this and this and this and this. It's like, oh my god, it's gotta be like, it's like the place where they make Disneyland.
But before we...
Yeah. We should
maybe you
Greg.
should introduce yourself to the audience with a little bit of your CV.
Yeah, so I've been at Weta Workshop for about 17 years or something like that, and I started as a concept designer. Although the first day I got there, Richard took me down to the beach. I didn't know why I was going down to the beach. This place called Red Rocks in Wellington, just a beautiful, rugged bit of coast. And he took me out and he stuck me in front of a boat, this miniature boat, and I was on one side holding a massive piece of metal, and on the other side was this other girl, and we were puppeteering the Master and Commander boat, and that was my first
surprise.
day. Yeah, while someone sprayed it with a hose. We're like, is that realistic? Does that look like we're on the water? I don't know what the fuck I was doing. I was just like making this boat move up and down.
I always forget that Weta built the surprise for that show.
That's right, yeah.
Oh.
So my first day was a surprise, literally. But that was good fun. But actually the next day I was in and I was drawing pictures of monsters. Actually I was drawing pictures of giant robots and dinosaurs, because I send in my folio with, I'm a dinosaur nut, and I love robots and sci-fi, and I think my folio had basically robots, dinosaurs, and ray guns. And it just so happened that King Kong was about to start up
Oh my God.
in conceptual design, and they were working on a live action version of Evangelion that didn't end up making it anywhere, but they needed giant robots, and so my folio had just the right ingredients in it.
Unbelievable.
And so I've been working there for about 17 years. I did concept design for a bunch of different things. District 9 is probably the most notable one that was most...
That was the movie where I looked up the design and found you and became your fan.
I went and watched that movie because of the guns that were in the trailer for the movie. I saw it and I was like, oh right, okay, this is something I should go see.
Yeah, that was a great fun project. And that came out of Halo. We were working on Halo with Neil Blomkamp, and that's how we met him. And that was super exciting. Like, it was a fantastic opportunity, and I'd already seen Neil Blomkamp's shorts, like Live in Joburg and so on, and Tetraval, which became Chappie. And so it was exciting working on it, but at the same time, and I'm a Halo fan, at the same time, it's like I'm having to kind of reinvent a known universe, you know, and so that's not super exciting as an artist. So when Halo fell over, it was depressing for about a day, but then the next day, we were already talking about District 9, and then Peter and Neil got this idea that we'll turn Alive in Joburg into a feature film. That became District 9, and that was an inspiration. That was just like what lit the lid off, because it's like, okay, I get to design a science fiction world from the ground up. Yeah. And use all those sort of 80s touchstones. So it's very much inspired by 80s movies. A lot of Chris Foss references and just all that good stuff. So yeah, I worked on District 9, and then in that spare time, I was coming back to ray guns. I had this kind of ray gun world in my mind, and so I invented this idea of these kind of 1920s, 1930s Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers ray guns, and then I thought I need characters in a world around this, so I started building that. Came up with the idea of Dr. Grordbort's ray guns, and then layer by layer was building that, and then in the last 7 years or so, we met this chap, Rony Abovitz, who was the CEO of Magic Leap, and he came to me and Richard and said, I'm going to make these goggles, and you're going to be able to help, see virtual things in your real world with you. Imagine if you could, wouldn't you like to have your ray guns in your living room and have Dr. Grordbort and Lord Coxswain in the room with you? And I'm like, yes, of course I would. I also thought, okay, I don't know what you're smoking.
Right.
Because this is, a few years back, it's like that idea doesn't exist. I had kind of thought, I've been thinking about the virtual coexisting with the real since I was a kid. I think we all have if you read science fiction.
Yeah.
But I thought it was going to happen probably when I'm gone. So I went to Florida, met a bunch of his early people. The first person I met actually was this guy, Sam Miller. I asked Sam outside a diner in Fort Lauderdale, so what do you do? And he's this tall, erudite-looking chap. He actually like one of your Gemini astronaut suits. He looks like he could be. You'd put him in one of those, and he would just look like one of the astronauts.
Right.
He's from that era. He's just got the DNA. He's got the bone structure.
Looks like Sam Shepard.
Yeah. And I said, so what do you do? And he said, I work at NASA. Of course you do. and so he was at the time working on a project I think to use machine vision to dock payloads with the ISS. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, you know what you're doing, and a bunch of other smart people were in the room. And so that meeting was what made me think, okay, these people know how to build this system. It's possible. We will be able to figure out how to put the virtual in the real world. So I spent the last 7 years helping to R&D the Magic Leap platform through the process of making a game that would help to shape the system. Right. So Rony's brilliant idea really was like, games are a really hard problem to solve. They need to solve UI, they need to solve graphics, physics, blah, 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 lighting. So if you can solve a game, you can actually, for a computer system, you can solve many, many, many problems. You can solve the basic core problem of like visualizing the 3D in the real world.
So by the time you're done solving all the problems of the game, all other problems seem relatively easy by comparison.
Yeah, because if you're going to put pixels in the real world and interact with them, you need to be able to reach out and touch them. You need to be able to control them. And games are all about UX, about input, right?
It's about verbs.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that we always talk about when talking about VR stuff is that VR with hands especially is exciting because you go from having the verbs that you can map to a gamepad, to triggers and sticks and buttons, like shooting and jumping and running, to things like picking up and grabbing and throwing and swiping. And like the difference between swinging a sword in a controller video game is pulling a trigger and it always goes in the same path or it goes in a pre-programmed set of paths. When you swing a sword or shoot a gun, even in VR, you control everything about it. You can do trick shots where you stick your head out from under cover and all sorts of things that are impossible or have to be pre-programmed in traditional video games.
I like it. Like if you're trying to, the obstacle a lot of people have with games, right? If you're trying to play a game, you're trying to make your character move around, and if you give that to someone from the wrong generation, it's like they are trying to learn how to drive a car to operate a person.
This is what it's like when I watch my kids playing NBA basketball video games or any of the Touch the Wild.
It's like apparently this stick makes you look up. Apparently this button makes you jump. Apparently this these are all quite.
That's me.
But those are really There's not so should be not to be surprising. Sorry, that's an abstract weird idea. And so that's the quest, I think, with Magic Leap 1 and spatial computing is like, we'll take away that abstraction. How do I look over there? How do I look to the left? Well, I turn to the left.
We're building.
And how do I reach over to the thing? Well, I reach over to the thing. It's like, it just humanizes it.
Well, they're increasingly native interfaces for your brain.
Yeah.
Right? How are you all... I mean, one of the things that we started when I started my company and we were building tools is we wanted to build a way to like test storytelling, essentially, figure out new ways to tell a story. And you all with Magic Leap have a completely different problem. Like, at least with VR, we can block out the real world, and all we have to do is build a fake world, and we can control everything. When you're building in the real world, you don't only have the constraints of VR, but you also have to figure out how to overlay the stories that you want to tell in whatever space somebody has in their living room.
Yeah, and that's actually the challenge. It's a difference in mindset when you go to develop. Technically, it's very easy to get something running on Magic Leap, but the design mindset needs to change completely because the spaces are all different. And you could say like, let's make a game and we prescribe the space. So please play this game on your table. And that's good. That's a good place to start if you want to make things easy on yourself. But it wasn't our job to make things easy on ourselves. It was our job to smash our head against the wall and help solve the problem of Magic Leap. So we jumped in of like, okay, look, we need to make an action. I want to make an action game and have the Dr. Grordbort universe exist in your house with you as if it's happening to you. So you have to be as agnostic to the space as possible, And so, you're scanning the environment, and then you're trying to figure out, okay, well, a few things. So I wanted to have robots walking around. Well, I know that you have to be able to walk around your house to live there. So I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to find floors for you to walk around. I know that for that same reason, I'm going to better find a place for Lord Coxswain or the Moon Mistress to stand. Because if you can stand in your house, then they can stand in your house. But even so, we took little shortcuts, like we have flying enemies, because then they can fly around over top of things. It makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, you're having to look at the space and simplify it, and then figure out procedurally and dynamically where you would put content. And you're doing it also based on where you think the player is going to look. You've got the semantic understanding, well, those are floors, those are tables, those are walls. But there's a ton of tricks, because you can't control where someone will look. And at the moment with the Magic League 1, the field of view is a little bit less than we'd like, but of course it's going to get more. But because you're dealing with that restriction, you are trying to figure out what are good tricks to get someone to look just to the left when you want them to,
I had a Magic Leap at my house for a few weeks over Christmas, and during Christmas my living room is, I think, probably your worst case scenario, because it's like,
Oh, you were using mine?
no, I had a...
Oh, Norms was using mine over Christmas.
Yeah, I had a project where we were doing some... It doesn't matter. Anyway, I had one at home, and we had a Christmas tree in what is a 10 by 14 foot room with a bunch of furniture, and I have a 6-year-old, so there's toys all over the place. The dog's bed is in the middle of the room. Like, it is a nightmare for finding space, and somehow, like, it had me map enough of the room that it was able to find a couple of big spaces in the walls, it was able to find space on the ceiling, and it mapped down the hallway, so it would spawn robots down the hallway.
Oh, yeah.
And then they'd come down the hallway, you'd hear them clanking down the hallway, and be like, oh man, this is... Yeah.
The one that
I'm
really...
glad that worked. I'm glad I thought you were going to say it's the worst possible space.
No.
And it didn't work.
No.
Send me a bug report.
No, it was really good.
Over Christmas, when I was doing my favorite things, I included the goggles because they blew me away. I
Thank you
talked
for
about
that.
the whale outside the window of my house. But when I was playing Dr. Grordbort's in my office upstairs, there's a couch. And there's a point at which I turned around and Dr. Grordbort was standing behind my couch.
Yeah.
And I kept on challenging him, and it kept on working that he was standing behind my couch.
The important part there, though, right, is it's your couch.
Right.
It actually does change. I spent years making that game, but the day I took it home and played it, this is going to sound really egotistical, but Kate was on the couch, the TV was on in the background, she's reading a book, and I'm just going shooting robots that are climbing over her right in my own house, and then accidentally shoot her. Sorry, Kate. And then I'm yelling at her like, this game is really good. There's something about it happening in your own space that is like, it's different. It becomes more personal.
One of the things I love about doing spatial computing stuff is demoing, especially to people who've never done VR or AR before.
Yeah.
And I assume you've done a fair number of demos at this point, and test sessions and all that. The science on how young your children should be before you put them in VR is completely up in the air, it seems like right now.
We are the guinea pigs. So.
Yeah, I have started letting my 6-year-old try a little bit of VR.
Yeah.
And when we had the Magic Leap, I couldn't resist letting her try it.
Yeah.
I didn't put her in Dr. Grordbort's because of the shooting.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I did put her in the Sigur Rós. It's called
Tunandi.
Tunandi, yeah. Put her in
That's
that.
the procedural...
Yeah.
It grows.
Yeah.
And that was, she was wrapped. Like it was one of the most affecting demos to watch, because she was just like, Dad, there's trees growing over here. I don't know what this is called, but there's a thing growing over here. Look at this, and dummy. And she'd take it off and hand me the thing.
It's very tranquil. That's procedural as well. That's looking at your space and figuring out where to grow this kind of surreal spacescape. Yeah.
That and the playset are my two, like, in terms of, one of the things that's exciting to me about spatial computing is it doesn't always have to be about shooting. Nothing personal.
No, I understand. That's good.
Did you play Angry Birds?
In
Magic Leap?
Oh, I haven't played the Magic Leap version. It wasn't out when I did this.
The Magic Leap version of Angry Birds is mind-blowingly enjoyable.
How angry are they?
But the thing is that you can test your aim and look all around and wander around and find.
Yeah, peek underneath.
Yeah. I've played that and Tunandi both for hours and hours and hours. I find it endlessly interesting and thrilling.
The way the Tunandi thing evolves over time, I haven't played enough to know if it's different every time, but it seems
I've done it 3 times, and every time it's been radically different.
That's really cool. It was neat because she's done enough VR stuff that she's familiar now with VR, and like she still loves it and it's novel and it's exciting. But this she would have stayed in, she stayed in until the battery ran out.
Yeah,
the
cool.
first time we did
That's
it,
awesome
which
to hear.
I was like, this is bad parenting, but I'm only gonna have this for a couple more days. So
No, it's probably
what's it gonna do?
Yeah, we don't know. Like, there's obviously a lot of science and research to figure out like what is right for different age groups and with this sort of stuff. But I know that all of our efforts and Roni's real ambition is to make sure it's human friendly at every level, at the physiological level. So I think it's probably pretty good.
And I feel like with painting stuff in the real world is a little bit less scary in terms of like the reason you don't put kids in VR is because they don't really fully develop binocular vision until an age that we're not entirely certain of. And it seems like when you're painting things on top of the real world, I think it's probably, this is my non-scientific thought, but my hunch is that it's less effective.
Yeah, we'd have to get technical and probably get in trouble.
Okay.
There probably should be a PR person off camera. That's something I should say. There are PR people back at GDC and they don't know I'm here. They should probably be sitting off there and they would rap me if I said anything naughty that I wasn't supposed to say. But yeah, so one of the things that Magic Leap is doing is obviously having the light field, which definitely helps to solve that problem. But I think there's still a ways to go.
Yeah.
This technology is brand new. So
I love playing Dr. Grordbort's in Magic Leap, but I'm fascinated with how much legs Dr. Grordbort has. Not that I'm surprised, but you guys keep doing these. Richard Taylor spelled it out for me. He said, it's a British colonialist parody, and it turns out that the Chinese love parodies of British colonialism. Who knew?
Can't imagine why.
yeah.
And so you keep on going back to China to do these giant Dr. Grordbort exhibits.
Yeah, so I've been making that world for so long and painting so many pictures, making sculptures and so on, that we have a colossal exhibition of it. Like, it actually fills, it fills multiple rooms. The last time we went to Wujian in Shanghai, and I think we had 5 or 6 rooms. One room was massive, easily bigger than this entire space, out. And that was just the boardroom with paintings on the walls, mounted Venusian heads on the wall, and a massive boardroom table with dioramas of Venus and battle plans and all this kind of stuff. And you walk from there through a bookshelf that moves back when you get close to it. And now you're in the weapons room. It's like a lab where all the ray guns are. So I think I've designed 20 odd ray guns, and so they're all in there, as well as all the diagrams and paintings for them. And then you move from there into the Hall of Heroes, and we had all these sculptures of characters, kind of heroic characters, as well as their portraits. And from there into a natural history museum of Venus, so sort of inspired by the London Natural History Museum. It's massive, and it's
you have a skeleton hanging from a ceiling in that one?
That's next.
Okay.
We did actually. We designed a huge. I like the idea of a Venusian bear rug. It would be on the floor, like someone has shot some weird creature and then stretched its beautiful skin out on the floor for you to stand on, just like we do. And so we made some bizarre, messed up creature, and that's great fun. But there's tons of that stuff, just like it's a world that kind of just writes itself, because it is based on that, like I say, British colonialism, but actually just imperialism of any type, right? Just going out into the world and shitting on whatever culture.
Institutionalized racism.
It happens, and all humans do it at some point. And so it's just that writ large, I suppose. And it's, for me, it's fun. It's a parody. It's a satire. I get to poke fun at things. Because I just think that's endlessly fascinating how humans are so strange to each other. It's also quite recent history. For me, it's like that New Zealand has that recent history, like
of sloughing off the chains of Britain.
And so it's very close to my heart, I suppose. Like that, the Maori in New Zealand, and then the Pākehā, the white people came from England and basically just set up shop, and it's just a thing that keeps on happening. So I figured, okay, that happening in the solar system makes perfect sense.
What I find really interesting about Grordbort, now that I'm thinking about it, is I'm a big fan of parody, and I enjoy a lot of it here in the United States. But there's a cultural difference in the parody that you do with Dr. Grordbort, because even though you take no prisoners in sending up the racism and all of that, it is also still a bit of a loving portrait. It's a forgiving portrait. It's not forgiving his trespasses, but it's forgiving. It's understanding that there's still a person, however crazy and ridiculous.
So the exemplar of it is Lord Coxswain. He's the kind of centre of it, and I think of him as a lovable sociopath. He doesn't actually know that he's racist. He doesn't know that he's sexist. He doesn't know that he's doing these terrible things. He's just a product of his environment. And like I think there's someone quite powerful in your culture at the moment that actually is like a version of that, right? And I don't think a person like that knows that they're being bad necessarily, And so in the case of Lord Coxswain,
let's not give our person any credit.
No, I shouldn't.
There's
a joke. This is actually a problem for me when I'm designing this world. I realized when he came into power, who shall not be named, Trump.
That you were talking about Voldemort.
Coxswain was not quite of a harsh enough joke. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's the problem. The parody isn't harsh enough to work.
No.
Like if you look at Warren Ellis's Smiler was the first person I thought of from Transmetropolitan. The politician from Transmet who takes over it from the already fascist conservative leadership and makes it much, much, much worse. Even that's not enough of a parody to work in the real world.
No, when you're in the thick of it, the reality is darker than fiction.
Before we continue with the conversation, I want to let you know that this week's episode of Still Untitled was also made possible by Ahrefs, a digital subscription-based software for search engine optimization. If you want to grow traffic to your website, outrank your competitors on Google, and get tons of inbound leads, Ahrefs is the tool you need. Ahrefs is an all-in-one SEO toolset. It does absolutely everything from content research and keyword analysis to technical site audits, rank tracking, and backlinks analysis. Essentially, it gives you all the insights you need to research and monitor your niche, then rank your website on the top search engines. Ahrefs also just launched the beta for its new Keywords Explorer, rebuilding the whole tool with new technology and adding 9 additional sources of data. You can now do keywords research for YouTube, Amazon, Bing, and Yahoo. If you're the type of person that's into data, into analytics, and wants to know and wants to micromanage and min-max your traffic, you should check out Ahrefs. Now, Ahrefs has a 7-day trial for only $7. Sign up today at ahrefs.com. That's spelled ahrefs.com. ahrefs.com. Now back to the conversation.
Somebody said all productivity software is competing with Excel, and all notification software is competing with emailing yourself.
People text themselves now.
Yes, I do too.
Really?
Yeah.
Totally.
I email myself, but I haven't transcended to texting myself.
I mostly
Well,
email
it's too
myself,
easy
but
to ignore the emails to yourself, turns out.
Yeah.
I have texted myself things that I wanted to show people without sending it to them, but it's quicker to access the thing from my text app than it is from my email app sometimes.
I don't think I ever considered the fact that you could text.
Oh yeah.
Like, what does it look like?
For me, it says voicemail.
Yeah.
That's what it says it's coming from.
So I have to imagine at some point some network engineer was like, why the hell would anybody ever want to text themselves? You don't need to do this. There's no need for a loopback on this system.
Oh, by the way, sorry, do you remember a couple of weeks ago I said I went on an iTunes rant on Twitter? Have we talked about this?
No.
I went on an iTunes rant
It's a
on
great
Twitter.
piece of software. Why would you not love iTunes, Adam? It's everyone's favorite way to manage
I said,
music.
hey, Apple, how come iTunes is still a piece of bloated garbage?
I haven't used it in years.
Oh no! And I pointed out that I can open my stupid I could open my stupid solitaire game, which I only ever play on airplanes when nothing else is going on.
Yeah.
And it will know the game I was playing 10 months ago. But whatever I was listening to this morning is a mystery to iTunes.
Gone.
And I did an 7-tweet thing. Anyway, we got a call from their concierge service, like we can help you with your technical
the famous
problems.
people help.
And I'm like, that's not the help that I want. So I want you to rewrite the software.
From scratch. Couldn't they just roll it back like 100 versions or something?
They could.
Wouldn't that be a solution?
Well, but the thing where you get in the car, today on what grinds my gears, the thing where you get in the car and it just starts playing a random song that you haven't listened to in 15 years?
For Julia, for my wife, it's always the specific Michael Giacchino tune from Star Trek. She has no idea why it's the default. I'm just going to play this.
Mine changes
It
every
knows
3
something about
weeks. And I have no idea. I don't know why it changes sometimes. I know for a while it was one of those free U2 songs that they foisted on us a decade ago.
A decade? Isn't that only like a couple of...
I don't know. Time's fun.
You're 2 beers in, you're getting cranky old man.
I've been at GC all day. I talk to people about business development. I'm wearing a collared shirt. No, it was. It's just a terrible Like, I don't even use iTunes.
No.
I use Spotify, and it always plays.
We don't
Anyway.
have to waste Greg's
Sorry.
lovely time here on the podcast complaining about shitty software.
Now we're going to call them the concierge people again.
In which of the Dr. Grordbort stories? So I've been to your studio a bunch of times now. The Magic Leap studio.
Yeah.
I love your team. It's always really fun to go there and see what toys you guys are playing with, and I have all sorts of ideas and things I want to. Like, I'm so excited about the technology. It feels to me, to have much more legs than even VR to me in terms of the way that I like to take in imagery and to be transformed and transported. But you have a lot of pieces from the Dr. Grordbort's exhibit. And which room does that giant, beautiful fireplace go in?
So the fireplace was made for Ujin, the city in Shanghai. So that was for that big giant boardroom. But that's in our all hands area. So our all hands area has like this where we get together and we talk at the end of the week about what we're doing. This, you know, we can address everyone. And it's a fun space. It's like a little capsule of, well, actually, it's quite a big capsule of the Dr. Grordbort's universe with the heads on the wall and portraits and busts. It just makes you feel like you're in that universe. It's great fun. But that fireplace was made for Shanghai, and it's all custom designed as well. I actually drew it like on the back of a napkin, and then a bunch of very clever artists went away and actually sculpted it. But it's like, so it looks kind of Victorian, but actually all the filigree and everything is all Venusian. There are little rockets and robots and stuff like that. It's fun. It's excessive. I think Richard made 2 of them in the end. We have one that went to China, and then one that is permanently in our studio.
How did you? Did you? We haven't brought him on the podcast, but Andrew Stanton, who's the director of John Carter of Mars,
Among other things.
among many other things, is a friend of Tested, and I feel like you guys would get along famously
sure we
talking
would,
about
yeah.
extraplanetary design.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and retrofuturism too. Like there's a bunch of interesting things happening in different. There's Afrofuturism, which we saw a lot of in Black Panther, and it's kind of come up around that, and is I think probably the first thing that a lot of people saw about that. But the retrofuturism stuff we've been seeing for. I mean, I think Norm and I did a video with the folks who made the Gothic ray gun rocket ship, which was a.
Oh, I remember that. I've never seen it in person. I saw the schematics for it.
Oh, God, it was so good. They made it for Burning Man first, and they brought it to Maker Faire in, I think, 2010 or 2011.
Yes.
And then it sat out on Embarcadero until the grant ran out.
And it has a whole interior.
Oh, it's like a 3-story inside with like a
It's
living
no longer at the
quarters.
Embarcadero?
I don't think it's at the Embarcadero anymore.
Sad.
It had like 3 stories, and it was this amazing, like clearly a labor of intense love. And I'm kind of curious where that came from for you, Greg. Did you grow up watching Buck Rogers and?
Pretty much, yeah. So when I was a kid, black and white television. Before I ever saw Star Wars, the first things I saw were the King Kong movie, Tarzan, the black and white serials, and Flash Gordon. And actually, I have this burning memory of there was one episode where there was a bottomless pit, right? And they're having a fight. Flash and someone were having a fight on the edge of a bottomless pit, and I would think about that bottomless pit all the time. Like, what happens if you fall into that? Like, do you just fall forever and then you die of old age at some point? Like, what happens? And then when I got older, I realized, would you hit the side and then just grind on down the side?
Oh, that's
Anyway.
You hope that you grind and it's not starvation.
Or I suppose you would hit and then ricochet over the other. Anyway, it's not good for you. But that science fiction was what inspired me, and like that age of adventure when the world was still kind of unknown. There were still corners of the world that were unexplored. And so that's really where the fiction came from, both from that era of like there's still a Skull Island, there's still a place that Tarzan can exist, right?
Unknown places in the world.
Yeah, which is much harder to imagine now. And so and really the metaphor there was, well, it can be our solar system, which is the Flash Gordon side of things comes in. And I always loved that design style, and I'd loved that since I was a kid, but I'd just come off the back, especially of District 9 and this other futurism. And I love designing that look and that feel, but I started to really see that everywhere, and I realized okay, that's now the popular default look. Is this
It became very common in video games.
Right.
Yeah, and I still see, most video games to me look like they have that design style, and it's amazing. The artistry is exceptional, but it's it starts to feel kind of homogenous, and so one of the reasons for focusing on Dr. Grordbort was, well, I'll go back to this other style, and I'll also better reinvent it in my own way. I don't have to be a slave to it as if it's a history. I can use it as a starting point and then riff on that. So it feels like an open canvas from that point of view.
One of the things you just mentioned, kind of as a throw a minute ago, is that at the end of the week at Weta, you do an all hands where everybody gets together And this is one of the process things that I love learning about in people's shops and in restaurants. I mean, when David Chang was on, he talked about family dinners at his restaurants being the place where all of the development for new recipes and all the things that they're doing going forward happens, new restaurants and the whole thing.
It's also where he knows how the restaurant's doing.
Yeah.
Like if he comes back after a while, he sits down at the family meal, and the quality of the conversation and the meal itself tells him how the crew of the restaurant is coherent.
And if you don't know what family meal is, it's the end of service. Usually people sit down and make a meal for themselves. They sit down and they, either new dishes that people are working on, or they try different things or whatever. Anyway, so just for people at home. So what is this the same? Is this a conceptual?
So our all hands we do them on a Friday. We actually knock off at about 4:30, and we get together and we talk with everyone. We drink a lot of beers and we eat a lot of chips, and it's a chance for us to share, what's happening with the studio, because communication is everything, right? Like that's really what most companies studios. Cultures ever complain about is like the lack of communication. So it's a chance for us weekly to say, hey, these are the things that have been happening. And also a chance for everyone to come together and show something. So we have the awesomeness review, where people can put in like a little video about the code that they've been developing, the tool that they've been building, the art, showing the animation, and we show it all off. And it's great. It's a really wonderful sharing thing. It's not actually a normal thing to Weta Workshop. Weta Workshop has Richard will do a address to a lot of the team a little bit less often. But Richard is actually, the great thing with communication there is that Richard is on the floor all the time, walking around, and it's a very communicative place. But for us, this is just as part of Weta Game Shop, and so our all hands is really like that chance to get together and share all the information. Because like I say, you just want to create more opportunities for that. If you're a creative team, and we're about 50 odd in our team at the moment. You're just trying to create as many opportunities as possible for people to talk.
I really respect and love how proud the team is of their work and how much they love the work. It's something that's like whenever you introduce me to someone and say, he did that part that you told me that you liked, and we start talking about it, it's always like an iceberg, right? There's so much depth below the thing, and getting to it and describing it and hearing about its shape. It's thrilling.
That's Weta Workshop. It is a big family. It's felt like a family since the start. It's not entirely, there's dysfunctional elements like every family.
Sure.
But like there's a lot of love. People keep on coming back. There's always familiar faces, and you don't feel like you're going into a business. You feel like you're coming to a place with a lot of like-minded souls to make art together. Even though that art is commercial, doesn't matter. It's like, and there's a team aspect to it as well, almost like a sports-like sort of thing where you're all in it together making something.
Well, a year or two ago, and I actually can't remember whether it's 1 or 2 years ago, when we came to shoot the Farewell to Arms, the King Arthur thing with all the different Weta Crafts people, there was a point. They gave us as our little home base that little conference room next to Richard's office in the main building, and that's sort of where we camped out. And then after we'd been filming for like 4 days, and there was just this afternoon in which Joey was off filming B-roll of something, and I didn't have anything to do, and so I laid down on the couch and I took a nap.
Yeah.
And from like 3 to 4 p.m. I took this nap, and I could hear the whole place happening around me. I could hear Richard talking to Ree, and I could hear people coming through, and that's the point at which I've always felt so welcomed by the family at Weta. That was the point at which I felt like I was a member of the family.
That's really nice.
And I'm continually, I'm coming down there in a couple of weeks, and I'm able to get out a couple times a year, and it always just more and more and more. It feels like I have family down there.
That's so cool to hear. Thank you. But that's genuine too. Like Richard. That's the way Richard is.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Last time I was there, he said, "I've got to go get something at the farm. Would you like to come on a drive with me?" My accent's all shite because I haven't practiced it in a while.
I don't know what that is. I can hear a little Richard.
A little bit, yeah. No, so, my apologies, New Zealanders, for butchering your beautiful accent. But
don't try this on Twitter, folks.
Is that you were saying beautiful accent?
I do.
Yeah.
I love the accent.
Really?
I do. Every time you say chips, I hear the chips.
Wash and chops.
Wash and chops. And we drove the 45 minutes up to his farm and back on a random Thursday afternoon, and just had the loveliest conversation in the middle of the day, outside of rush hour.
That's Richard for you.
Yeah.
He's a good dude.
Greg, thank you so much for
pleasure.
Visiting the cave, but being on the podcast, and I hope it's not the last time.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Anytime.
I have
Yeah.
I have an announcement. So I've got a book coming out on May 7th.
Wait, what?
I
You wrote a book?
occasionally, apparently, a book called Every Tool's a Hammer. Simon and Schuster is releasing it, and we have a sweepstakes in which you can go to adamsavagebook.com and enter this sweepstakes, and the grand prize is an early model of Chewbacca's bandolier that I made without enough reference material. It's not entirely correct, but all the leather work and boxes built by me. With a bag on it, and then there's also a prize for a 15-minute phone call with me. I'll advise you or consult on anything you want to talk about, whether it's practical or
Question.
just
something more of a comment?
conversational. AdamSavageBook.com is where you can go enter this sweepstakes. Again, my book, Every Tool's a Hammer, comes out. You can pre-order it now on Amazon, and if you have an inkling that you might get it, please go pre-order it. I can't wait to hear the feedback when people start to actually read it.
Pre-orders are super important to people who've written books because it determines how many copies of the book the stores order and things like that.
Yes.
So go do the pre-orders so that there will be enough copies of the book when Adam's book comes out. I'm only like halfway through, but it's very good. I really enjoyed it. I thought I knew a lot about you coming into this, and it turns out I've learned stuff. So.
You know, it's funny. One of my closest friends was like, you never go through your detailed biography with your close friends.
No.
You don't ever walk
I mean,
through it beat by beat. He's like, there's all this stuff I didn't know where it fit in, but now I do.
Yeah, it all makes sense now. The whole picture's coming together.
Dark secrets.
Yes.
Greg, thank you so much. Where can people find out more about you, Grordbort's?
Oh, that's good. I am shit at social media, so I think you probably
Shit
just
at
go
social
to
media?
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go. So there's no choices there. But if you go to wetaworkshop.co.nz or magicleap.com, I'm sure they'll tell you what we're doing.
So much.
All right. Thanks,
you all next time.
everybody.
Thanks for listening this week, and I want to let you know that Still Untitled was made possible this week by Ahrefs, a digital subscription-based software for search engine optimization. This all-in-one SEO toolset does absolutely everything, from content research and keyword analysis to technical site audits, rank tracking, and backlinks analysis. Ahrefs gives you all the insights you need to research and monitor your niche, then rank your website on the top of search engines. Ahrefs has a 7-day trial for only $7. Sign up today at ahrefs.com. That's spelled AHREFS.com. We'll see you next week.